Hello from Voyage Beyond Earth, and thank you for clicking on the video. If you haven't already, pause the video and go watch episode 1, where we introduce the solar system, talk a little bit about the sun, and just introduce the concept of habitability. Today we're going to talk about the ingredients of life, a few theories that suggest why life arose on Earth, and the history of spaceflight. All this and more on Voyage Beyond Earth. As most of the world already knows, the Wright brothers are credited with creating the first airplane in 1903. Although designs of winged gliders have been found since the 16th century, there have also been several hand gliders and other tools of flight. But the Wright brothers were the first to create a fixed-wing aircraft. At that time, no one really thought that in the next 70 years, man would be on the moon. Although Apollo 11 was the famous moon landing mission, there were 11 other missions, including Apollo 8 that went around the moon in an orbit and returned with the crew, without ever landing, and Apollo 17 of 1972, the last time man would touch the moon. There are a lot of questions as to why humans did not develop a moon colony, and there are many, and I mean many conspiracies out there. But the main reason was that in the Apollo era, 3 beloved astronauts had died, so public support had drastically gone down, and the Congress was no longer happy in supporting NASA with the funding. The space era died in early 1970s and now only lives with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station and a dream for a Martian colony by mid-2030s. So let's talk about life. If you're watching this video, chances are you're alive. But how was Earth when it first formed? And could life even exist at that point? As you may expect, about 4.2 billion years ago, it was a glowing ball of rock and lava, with temperatures equaling the sun's surface temperature. It is also around this time that the giant impact hypothesis, or the Big Splash, theorized that a large planetesimal, the size of Mars, hits the Earth, and this collision left over some debris that formed the present-day moon. This is the most popularized theory, believed by almost all scientists around the world. But I have some opinions on it that are contradictory. We can discuss anything that I talk about in these videos in the comment section below, because this channel is about discussion rather than just educating. So firstly, the KT impact that killed off the dinosaurs, I'll talk about that later, was supposedly 10 km in diameter and still left a remnant crater of about 180 km in diameter. That is an 18 times increase in the diameter. A Mars-sized object would have a diameter of 6,500 km and a crater that was 117,000 km across, which is 9 times bigger than the Earth. And another problem is that we don't really see a clear dip on the Earth, signifying a large enough crater, and that sort of collision should have knocked the Earth out of the Sun's orbit, and we're clearly still in it. Before we start out with the origins of life, I want you to recall that the solar system was formed 4.6 billion years ago. So some studies show that life could have existed as early as 4.1 billion years ago. However, for the sake of simplicity, let's just say life started between 4 to 3 billion years ago. So what are the ingredients to life? Carbon is key to organic chemistry. Life on Earth is mostly carbon-based. Liquid water is also essential to life, as our cells are mostly made up of water. Water is also an excellent solvent, so it's perfect for chemical reactions to happen for life to start. About 600 million years into its formation, the Earth became cool enough to retain an atmosphere and prevent water from evaporating into space. Also, icy asteroids were able to fill up our oceans with water. The last ingredient in this recipe for life are important elements. The first 20 elements are really important, especially hydrogen, oxygen, carbon and nitrogen, as these will create the proteins, the carbohydrates, the lipids and the nucleotides in our body. Now that we have our ingredients, let's actually make life. So to create a working life system, you need a coding platform where you can create the genetic code. You'll also need a bioenergy supply. So in plants they make their own energy, but they do it from the sun. You'll also need a template, and this is the DNA that the cells can work with and duplicate. You'll also need a messenger and a transport system, which is the mRNA and the tRNA, and water for the reactions to occur. This also supports the theory that life first emerged from the oceans. As life emerges, prokaryotes or single-celled organisms first emerge due to a random assortment of amino acids, which are just random assortments of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and sulfur. Although the scientific community cannot really agree upon one theory, it has been theorized that these random elements could have been in a swamp, and when the swamp was struck with lightning, they just had enough energy and were in the right order for life to start. Fast forward to the 1950s. Scientists Stanley Miller and Harold Urey started an experiment with gases that were thought to have existed on early Earth, along with a pool of water to simulate early seas and electrodes to simulate lightning. In 2007, after Miller's death, scientists discovered that they had in fact created or led to the creation of 20 amino acids, a very important factor to life. It was thought till then that we had discovered over 10,000 proteins, and arranging the right proteins in their amino acid forms would be impossible. But they had created 20 organic compounds from inorganic matter, and that was pretty impressive. This now brings us to extremophiles. Extremophiles are the world's strongest and the toughest organisms that live in locations that would be detrimental to other life forms. A few examples would be the halophilic extremophiles that live in undersea vents with searing temperatures, and they get their energy from geothermal heat and not from the sun. Radiophilic extremophiles grow faster with 500 times the normal radiation level, and several species were even found growing on the insides of the walls in Chernobyl. A particularly exciting extremophile is the Deinonychus radiodurans that can survive in a vacuum with lower high temperatures and are radiation resistant. It is so radiation resistant that many wonder why it would have to develop that kind of resistance. And along with many, I believe it could be because it had to travel through the radiation-filled space. Now this is the theory of panspermia. The theory states that life could have stored away on an asteroid, and when the asteroid hit Earth, life began to thrive. Now the image on your screen is the geological timescale. It shows us how life has evolved, living in the ocean and then on land, from land to trees and then to air. And here we see the human scale of evolution, according to Darwin's theory of evolution. Homo neanderthalensis, or just Neanderthals, are known to be the oldest closest relatives to modern humans that emerged around 200,000 years ago, and this species is said to have larger jaws and interbred with Homo sapiens. Yeah, Homo sapiens, that's us. In the entire history of Earth, there have been 5 major extinction events, and believe it or not, the first one was caused because of too much oxygen, as cyanobacteria flourished in the oceans, and cyanobacteria were the first to start photosynthesis. The last great extinction was of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, and about every 100 million years, a similar sized asteroid hits Earth. So if our mathematical models are right, an asteroid should hit us in about 35 million years. Now we've been through chemistry, biology, geography, and now it's time for math. Wait, don't click off yet. I promise it'll be interesting. Scientists have guessed that there have been 3 times that the Earth has been covered with ice and snow, called the snowball Earth. A snowball Earth is caused by a positive feedback. Negative feedback is when something happens and you do the opposite thing to balance it. In chemistry, this is like Letalier's principle. The more pressure you put on a system to move it one way, the more it reacts to balance it. A positive feedback is what causes the snowball. If Earth cools a little bit, more ice is formed, so more light is reflected than that would have been absorbed by the liquid water. This makes temperatures colder, so more ice is formed, and over a long period of time, this leads to a cooler planet by almost 8 degrees on average, and sometimes even more. So when we're looking at habitability, we need to look at the temperature of the planet. Water must be liquid, and the temperatures must be just right for humans to start living. So to calculate the temperature of a faraway planet, the formula is the temperature of the star, which we calculate by spectroscopy and looking at its color. We'll talk about that later. So we have the temperature of the star, multiplied by 1 minus the albedo. Albedo is just how reflective a surface is. So 1 is 100% reflectivity, and 0 is 0% reflectivity. So as we reach a snowball Earth, the albedo increases as ice is more reflective than water. Now this over 1 minus the optical depth, or how much the gases absorb and heat on the planet, all to the power of 1 over 4, times the square root of the radius of the star. This can be found by using the transition method that we will develop further in another episode. This divided by 2 times the distance of the star from the planet. Okay, I know this looks difficult, But it's quite intuitive. Looking at the 2D, as the distance increases, the temperature should decrease. And that makes sense, and hence it is a denominator. The albedo is the same. Higher albedo, which is more reflectivity, which is more ice, means lower temperatures, and hence it is to the power of 1/4. I think we've had enough maths for today. Thank you for watching, and I promise tomorrow's episode is going to be a little bit more fun on Voyage Beyond Earth, where we look at space agencies and exoplanets.